few minutes to make sure our attendees have a chance. We've had a chance for these attendees to get joined in, so I think we'll get started about now. So, as I said, good morning and good evening wherever you are. I think for most of you it's the morning. Most of you have joined at this point, so we can get started. My name is Philip Colleen. I am the manager of the LEDS Global Partnership Energy Working Group Secretariat, which is housed in the Climate and Energy Program at the World Watch Institute. Together with my colleague Sandra Kananusit, who chairs the Asia LEDS Partnership, we will be leading you through this webinar. We're very happy to have you all online with us, and it looks like we have a good turnout for the webinar, and it looks like it's increasing. So this webinar is the second of a three-part series highlighting innovative tools used to advance low-emission and climate-resilient energy planning in Asia. The first session covered the Stockholm Environment Institute-designed Long-Range Energy Alternatives Planning System, or LEAP. Apologies for the ambulance. So, as I was saying, the first session covered the Stockholm Environment Institute-designed Long-Range Energy Alternatives Planning System, or LEAP, and its applications in Vietnam and Indonesia. A summary and recording of that session is available on the LEDS GP, Asia LEDS Partnership, and Energy Working Group websites. This second session highlights the Geospatial Toolkit, a map-based software application developed by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, or NREL. Shortly, we will be hearing from two of its developers, and afterwards we will have a presentation of a country case study from Thanh Hoa province of Vietnam, where the toolkit was utilized to share insights on best practices for its application. Just a quick disclaimer here, the LEDS GP does not endorse or recommend any specific products or services. Information provided in this webinar is featured on the LEDS GP website as one of many best practice resources reviewed and selected by technical experts. So just before I share the agenda with you, some quick housekeeping items. You have two options for listening into this webinar. You can listen through your computer by selecting the mic and speakers radio button on the right-hand GoToWebinar display, or you can listen via telephone by selecting the telephone option on the right-hand display and then calling in using the phone number and PIN provided. A quick note to our panelists, please mute your audio devices when you're not presenting, and for all other attendees, please keep your microphone muted for the entire webinar. If you have any questions over the course of the webinar, please type them into the question box on the right-hand GoToWebinar control panel, and we will address as many as possible at the end of the presentation. If you encounter any technical difficulties during the call, please contact the GoToWebinar help desk number at the bottom of the slide. That number is 888-259-3826. So, getting into the agenda, after these brief introductory remarks, Sandra and I will provide a brief overview of the Asia LEDS Partnership and LEDS Global Partnership Energy Working Group, including some highlighted areas of activity for 2016. Then, getting into the core content of the session, we will hand the mic over to our three panelists. Donna Hein-Miller from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory will introduce the Geospatial Toolkit to you and describe how it's used. Then we will hear from John Duckworth, also from NREL, who will update us on the development of the Geospatial Toolkit web-based GIS platform, which is known as Enterprise GST or eGST. And finally, we will hear from Con Nguyen, the Vietnam coordinator for the USAID Low Emission Asian Development Program, who will present on how the toolkit has been used in the country. We're going to have more detailed introductions for these speakers, but that'll be coming up shortly. Afterwards, we will have around 15 minutes for Q&A. As mentioned before, if you have questions, please type them into the question box on the control panel, and we will try to get through as many as possible. And then at the end of our session, we'll have a very brief survey. We ask that you please stay online to share your feedback on the webinar, which is very helpful for helping us improve. So with that in mind, let me turn over to Sandra.
Okay, great. Thank you, Phil, for the introduction, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sandra Kananusit, and I'm part of the Asia LEDS Partnership Secretariat team. Many of you have participated in virtual or in-person activities of the Asia LEDS Partnership or LEDS Global Partnership before, so I'll just provide brief background on what we do. For context, the LEDS Global Partnership is an international initiative that draws support and participation from over 160 organizations and countries, ranging from governments to international donors to technical institutes. Our goal is to upscale implementation of low-emission, climate-resilient development. The LEDS Global Partnership has 3 regional platforms through which activities are delivered. The Asia LEDS Partnership is one of those 3 platforms. The LEDS GP also has technical working groups in a number of topics that provide expertise in support of activity delivery. So the Energy Working Group, which Phil is a part of, is one of these working groups. So in short, we're all working together. We are a network that seeks to mobilize collective knowledge and resources towards a common goal. In this webinar is a collaboration between the Asia LEDS Partnership and Energy Working Group to bring members in Asia awareness, expertise, and experience sharing from peers on innovative tools for advancing low-emission, climate-resilient energy planning. This session, as Phil mentioned, is one of 3 to 4 planned sessions in these few months. On this theme of innovative tools for energy planning and implementation. So please do stay tuned for a few upcoming sessions. We have one planned around mid to late May and possibly another in June. So we'll keep you in the loop for sure. So as a little background, why are we hosting this webinar series? And it's because you, our members, have told us that this is a topic of interest. Through the Asia LEDS Partnership, we work with our members every 2 years to identify regional priorities on which to share knowledge and advance collaboration. For the 2015 to 2016 period, clear priorities picked by members pertaining to the energy sector were capacity building for low-emission energy planning, strengthening know-how on finance mobilization for low-emission measures in energy, and facilitating peer exchange on both of these topics. So we hope that this webinar series helps to raise awareness on available tools to support you in doing those 2 things and brings you approaches and lessons learned by peers. In addition to this webinar series, the Asia LEDS Partnership is working on a few activities in 2016 that relate to low-emission energy planning and implementation. So taking a moment to share those with you. We have a newly published online catalog of training resources on low-emission energy planning and implementation. So on there, you will find an extensive list of free, quality online training that you can access anywhere, anytime. We'll provide a link to that training webpage at the end of this webinar. We also have 2 upcoming events that might interest you. One is our annual Asia LEDS Forum, which gathers about 250 members, and a back-to-back workshop focusing on catalyzing finance for grid-connected clean energy in Asia for about 100 persons. Both of these events will take place during the last week of June in Hanoi, Vietnam. So you may have received save the dates or other promotional materials on these events already. If not, and you are interested, please do contact us. We've also written and released a number of case studies related to low-emission energy planning and have a series of blogs from guest authors and contributors on this topic as well. So all of these resources can be found on the Asia LEDS Partnership website at www.asialeds.org, and we'll be sharing our contact information at the end of the session. All right, thank you. Back to you, Phil.
Hi, thank you, Sandra. So now I'll briefly profile the Energy Working Group before handing it off to our panelists. The Energy Working Group is one of the longest standing sectoral working groups of the LEDS Global Partnership. We have now over 250 experts and decision makers from around the world making up our membership. The chair, Alexander Ox, is supported by 3 regional co-chairs representing each of the major regions of the LEDS Global Partnership, and the secretariat, which I manage, is run through the WorldWatch Institute. The Energy Working Group promotes, supports climate-compatible development in the energy sector through a work program that is focused on supporting learning, information exchange, and communication of best practices, providing timely advisory services and technical assistance, and enhancing opportunities for coordination and collaboration between experts on energy low-emission development strategies. I just wanted to highlight a few activity areas for the Energy Working Group in 2016. In addition to this webinar series, we will also be hosting 2 webinars on low-emission climate-resilient energy strategies. Those webinars will be focused on Africa and Latin America and the Caribbean. We will also be hosting or co-hosting several in-person energy trainings, including at the Asia LEDS Partnership Regional Workshop that Sandra was mentioning, as well as potentially at the LEDS Latin America and the Caribbean Regional Workshop, which will be held this September in Panama. I'd also like to quickly highlight our 2 signature projects, which we're producing in 2016. We're currently developing first case studies for the LEDS Sustainable Energy and Development World Atlas. The atlas will be used to showcase best case studies of countries that have implemented energy sector low-emission development strategies with significant associated socioeconomic and environmental benefits. The atlas is intended to be used as an online tool that both energy sector experts and laymen can use to inform both robust policymaking as well as to galvanize political will. The second project I'd like to briefly mention is the Energy LEDS Community of Practice. The intention of this project is to create a dynamic and member-driven working group that moves beyond webinars and exchange of best practices to bring together experts from around the world to work on the development and deployment of concrete solutions to a specific energy sector issue. This first community of practice that the Energy Working Group has designed is focused on bioenergy, specifically on the integration of agricultural residues into grids for electricity generation in Latin America and the Caribbean. This group will answer questions like how do you analyze the costs and benefits of alternative development pathways, how do you assess your biomass and bioelectricity potential, and how to design and implement concrete policies to meet that potential. If you'd like to stay updated on any of these upcoming activities and haven't yet already joined our membership, please let us know by emailing myself or Alexander using the contact information provided at the end of this presentation, and we can then add you to our mailing list. So today's session builds off another signature project of the Energy Working Group that we've been working on and continuing to develop for the past 2 years. The LEDS Energy Toolkit was published in 2015, and the toolkit provides a reference guide for 18 well-established LEDS planning tools and methodologies like the Geospatial Toolkit, all of which are available at very low to no cost. The Energy Working Group is planning to release an updated version of this toolkit featuring new tools. So if you are aware of any or you have developed any that you would like to be featured, please let us know. The 2015 version can be accessed on both the LEDS Energy Working Group and WorldWatch Institute websites. So without further ado, let me introduce our first and second panelists for the session, Donna Heinmiller and John Duckworth. Donna is a senior scientist at NREL who has led geospatial analysis and modeling, including resource assessment, site suitability analysis, economic potential, and geospatial supply curve development for a number of renewable resource technologies over the last 17 years. She was a part of the original development team for the Geospatial Toolkit and has helped expand its capabilities over the last decade. She holds a Master of Forestry and Spatial Data Analysis from Colorado State University and a Bachelor's of Science in Natural Resources from the University of Michigan. After Donna, we will then hear from John Duckworth. Also from NREL, John is an analyst and web developer for the Geospatial Data Science team in the Strategic Energy Analysis Center. He's one of the primary developers of the Enterprise Geospatial Toolkit, or eGST. eGST is a web-based GIS platform that enables data dissemination and analysis related to renewable energy potential across the globe. He also has experience building web-based GIS tools that enable analysis in a variety of renewable energy domains. John has a master's in civil engineering, specializing in geographic information science from the University of Colorado, Denver, and a Bachelor of Arts in physics from Middlebury College in Middlebury, Vermont. So with that, let me hand the mic over to you, Donna.
Thank you, Philip, and thank you everyone for attending. As Philip said, I will be giving a brief introduction to the Geospatial Toolkit and showing you some of the functionality. The Geospatial Toolkit is a standalone desktop application designed to help non-geospatial professionals explore renewable energy opportunities and development issues. It supports both basic visual exploration, where users can look at the distribution of the renewable energy resources, their quality relative to other layers in the tool, and then quantitative exploration using structured queries developed by NREL and other stakeholders representing common issues affecting renewable energy development. The data packages are specific to a single country or region, and we have a number of individual country or regional toolkits available on our website for download. The data packages reflect the best available public information that we could include at the time that the toolkit was developed. The Geospatial Toolkit has been under development since 2005, when we looked for a way to make the modeled resource datasets that NREL had been producing for wind and solar more accessible. Previously, the outputs of these assessments were just presented in maps and reports, but the actual data was not easily accessible. So we could do internal analysis to combine the resource data sets with infrastructure and come up with technical potential estimates, but outside users could not. The original toolkit provided a way for users to interact directly with the data. They could query it to get resource data values and do high-level resource screening analysis to get a sense of where good opportunities for renewable energy development existed, or what kinds of barriers there might be to deployment of that technology. Over the last decade, the toolkit has evolved to include more renewable energy technologies like biomass, more complex queries involving more layers and at higher detail, and move to a more open and distributable platform so that we can make the tool accessible to the public free of charge. The next big step for the toolkit is the web-enabled enterprise geospatial toolkit, which John will talk of next. In addition to the visual and query-based exploration I mentioned earlier, the toolkit can also serve as a quick start for more customized analysis in full geospatial software, such as Esri or Quantum GIS. The results of the queries can be exported from the tool, or users can directly access the Spatial Light database that houses the toolkit's data. With some geospatial expertise, users can also add their own spatial data layers for visualization or substitute their data for existing layers. For instance, often the transmission line data that we use is somewhat schematic, and people may have access to higher quality data that would make the results of the tool more accurate. The spatial analysis is done on the fly based on the choices made by the user. This allows a user to tailor the analysis based on their knowledge of local conditions and make the answers more relevant to their unique development situation. But it still makes use of NREL's renewable energy development experience to provide a reasonable framework for making those development choices. This slide has some examples of questions that the toolkit is geared to answer at a high level. For example, how much high-quality resource is close to infrastructure? what is the impact of removing protected areas from development or incompatible land use types? How much impact does one criteria versus another have on resource availability for a particular site? And by putting these tools in the hands of the users, they can see the sensitivities of their results on the data that is available and the data that they know the accuracy of. So we always say good answers depend on good data, so we try to put the best data that we can into the tool, but we also want to make it possible for users to improve that data. So whenever possible, we populate the toolkits with publicly distributable data provided by the country, because that data is usually more up-to-date and more accurate. But for all layers except transmission lines and some of the renewable energy resource categories, we do have a global data source that we can use if that country-specific data is not available. This slide lists the data sets that form the core of the geospatial database in the toolkit. We always have at least a solar resource data set because there is a global solar resource data set available from NASA. But the other renewable energy technologies will vary based on what is available for the country. And then the other categories of data are base data, elevation, slope, land use, land cover, political boundaries, infrastructure, like I said, transmission lines. We may not have a public source for roads, power plants, etc. Now I'll just give you a quick look at the toolkit itself, and we're going to use our most recent toolkit for the Philippines. So the toolkit will open at the country level, and the first thing that I recommend to users is to do a visual exploration of the data in order to get familiar with it. So I'm going to zoom in to an area around Manila. And so the toolkit includes your basic navigation tools to zoom in, zoom out, zoom to the full extent of the data, go back and forth. You can also type in a latitude, longitude if you want to zoom into a specific location if you already have an area of interest in mind. And then this tool allows us to query the attributes. I'll talk about these other tools in a second. So I'm going to start with the wind resource layer. And then you can see Manila is here. You can see the legends for the layer. There's also some tools to give you information about the source of the layer, metadata. You can also change some of the styling, and you can export the data if you wish outside of the toolkit. So we can see quickly that there are good wind speed areas to the south and east and west of Manila, so lots of good wind resource. The next layer that I like to look at is protected areas, because this is usually a set of areas that are pretty much off limits for development. And you can see it does impact some of the higher wind resource areas, but there are still plenty of areas left that could be developed. Next, let's take a look at the distribution of the transmission lines. And so you can see the pathways to Manila, and there are good pathways that go into this region and into this region, as well as over a longer distance to this side. And then road networks. So these layers are of importance both for development of the actual site, getting the components for the wind turbines and the wind farm itself out to the site to be built, but then also bringing the electricity from the site to the load center that would the eventual customer of that electricity. So just on this visual exploration, we can see that there seems to be good resource and good infrastructure to support development in this area and in this area. So this seems like a good category for a good area to focus on for doing the quantitative analysis. this is the tool for conducting the quantitative analysis. And so you can choose, based on the data available in the toolkit, what renewable energy technology you wish to examine. So we'll look at wind, and then these are the available wind resource layers in the toolkit. We will stay with the 80-meter wind speed, which is current technology. And looking at the wind resource distribution, we'll pick a minimum wind speed of 7.5 meters per second. And then you can go through and start to stack up different types of criteria to see the impact of these criteria on your resource availability. You can do them individually, or you can do combinations. Because it is doing the geoprocessing on the fly based on the choices, adding lots of different criteria can cause the application to take quite a long time to finish the processing. So in the interest of time, I've run a few analyses for you guys to see that impact. And so here I am just looking at this area around Manila, and we can see the full wind resource data set here. Then I have run a query where I've just taken off the protected areas. And so if I draw those here, you can see that those areas have been eliminated from the resource potential. This next tool does a quantitative summary of the results. And so we can see by the resource class how much land area is available after conducting that exclusion of the protected areas, limited just to the window that's being displayed in the view. So that comes up to an estimate of potential capacity of about 12.5 gigawatts. So then going back to this and then filtering it so that we have a limit of 5 kilometers to road corridors and 5 kilometers to transmission lines, we can see a further reduction, a tightening of the area of interest so that we can focus our attention further. And then again, if you look at the quantitative analysis, you can see that the resource area has been reduced to about 7.8 gigawatts. And I should also mention that in the summary tab, you have a listing of the criteria that you used to conduct that analysis for documentation purposes, and you can export these results so that you can use them outside of the toolkit. In addition to the statistics for the window area that we're looking at, you can also get a breakdown of the subnational statistics, the province level statistics, again broken out by class for every province that is within this area of interest that I'm displaying here. But keep in mind, it's not necessarily the full province, it's only the portion of that province that is showing. And then finally, this is another query that just kind of narrows that focus a little bit more and looks at the impact of excluding certain categories. So here I'm just limiting it to a few land use categories that are more compatible for wind development, excluding things like agricultural lands or heavily forested areas that would be more difficult to develop for wind technology. And then again, you can see that distribution, or the remaining resources, about 3 gigawatts. You can see it visually. You can again look at the individual resource or individual informational layers, infrastructure layers, in order to get a sense of where that development opportunity lies relative to how you would go about developing it and any of the barriers that would be applied. So you can see that this is a powerful tool for really getting a sense of the capabilities of an area that you're interested in developing, the amount of capacity that it might potentially be able to contribute to the grid, the development issues, and just the overall quality. So you can translate the resource, the wind speeds, for instance, into different levels of capacity factor for estimating potential generation. And that is, in fact, what you see in these summaries are very high-level assessments of the installed capacity and the potential generation based on the resource intensity. So with that, I will turn it over to John to talk about the Enterprise Geospatial Toolkit.
Great, thank you, Donna. As Donna said, I'll be describing the Enterprise Geospatial Toolkit, which is a web-based GIS platform that builds on the work done in the desktop spatial toolkit. The Enterprise Geospatial Toolkit is built on a Web GIS framework developed at the National Renewable Energy Lab called OpenCarto. Some of the considerations in moving the desktop functionality to a web-based platform were the ability to have a platform-independent tool, one that isn't dependent upon a particular operating system or a particular set of hardware, and that users can access from any computer. Also, the ability to ensure current and consistent data sets. The web-based eGST draws from our databases, and so we're able to easily keep those data sets current and accurate, and it's easy to know that all users are using the same data sets for their analysis. The use of a web-based platform also enables us to use large data sets that would be difficult to download and utilize on individual users' machines, but are much easier for us to host on larger servers. It also enables a robust client-server architecture, and it allows us to use more powerful hardware to conduct the analysis and to spread our analysis over sometimes multiple machines and multiple processors for faster run times. And then also, it allows us to take advantage of development that has been previously done on other renewable energy web applications. Utilizing the OpenCarto framework, we're able to build in tools that have been created for biomass, wind, solar, and other applications within the United States, and continue work to develop custom tools for the Enterprise GST. The Enterprise GST builds on the functionality of the desktop geospatial toolkits and has many of the core functionality, core GIS functionality that you would expect from a web GIS application. It has the ability to organize and display spatial layers, the ability to navigate by zooming in, zooming out, zooming to a particular location. It allows users to overlay spatial data in unique combinations and also to restyle that data according to how they would like it to look. The Enterprise Geospatial Toolkit also allows users to share their maps by sharing the URL, which encodes much of the information that is present visually in the application. So users can turn on the layers that they would like to view, zoom into a particular location, and the URL will capture all of that information and can be shared with others. The Enterprise GST also has querying capabilities, so users can query spatial layers by point or custom region. And much like the desktop GST, all loading of spatial data layers and access to layer metadata, including source information, links to documentation, and any other information that might be associated with those data sets. In addition, it allows for the download and printing of map images and associated legends, metadata, and other information. And we've also built in the ability to generate custom reports for various analysis tools, which we'll see an example of a little bit later on. in addition to some of this core GIS functionality, the fact that we utilize the OpenCarto framework means that we have access to other modules that have been built for other applications. One of these modules is the Big Data Download module. And this plugin allows us to make very large resource time series data sets available for download and querying. Many of these resource data sets are sometimes many terabytes or even petabytes in size. And allowing users to download the entire data set is impractical and probably not tremendously useful to most users. So through our interface, we allow users to select a particular region or location, search for the data sets available for wind or solar resource in that area, and then choose which years and which attributes they would like to download. So in this way, we make these large data sets available to users in a way that's much more palatable and much easier for them to digest in their own analysis. Another module that we have built into the Enterprise GST is Interactive Guided Help. And this module allows us to provide interactive and participatory help that guides a user through tools or functionality that might be a little bit more complicated or might require a little bit more technical expertise in order to get through. These guided help sessions will actually navigate through the map and navigate through the application, and we can set it up so that users provide interaction to show that they're following along with the tutorial as well. So this is a nice way of getting people up to speed on tools that might be a little bit more complicated. One of the more exciting tools that we've been developing recently is the Dynamic Technical Potential Analysis tool. This is a tool that is still under development and is going to be released in the coming months, in the next month and a half or 2 months. And it allows users, much like the desktop Geospatial Toolkit, to calculate the technical potential or the available resource or generation based on certain custom filters that they can input themselves. So much like the desktop Geospatial Toolkit, users can choose a resource. They can narrow their query down to a particular state or region within the country. They can limit the resource bounds and how far they would like it to be from road corridors, what their slope bounds are, things like that. And then the tool will summarize that data by region, also for the entire area of interest. One of the advantages of the Web Geospatial tool is that we're able to take advantage of multiple servers and multiple processes to really reduce the processing time for these maps. The tool that in the past might have taken on the order of hours or sometimes even days to run complicated spatial analysis now can run in a matter of under a minute, sometimes in some cases even just a few seconds. And this enables users to really rapidly go through different scenarios and generate different results based on their custom inputs. The tool also generates, in addition to the tabular data, a spatial layer that is then added to the application and has all of the functionality of any other layer within the Web GIS application. So users can adjust the style, they can adjust the layer ordering, they can query that layer, and they can download it, just like any layer that comes from our databases as well. Building on top of the technical potential tool, we've also collaborated with CSTEP India to build a system planning tool. This is a tool that CSTEP actually prototyped and developed the initial stages for, and also did much of the data development for. And then we assisted with some of the performance improvements and usability as well. And in this tool, users take an underlying technical potential layer, And given those parcels, they can choose to add solar installations, either PV or CSP installations, in various locations that have available resource and meet the criteria. And as they add those installations, they can choose what kinds of equipment they would like to use, how much of that parcel they're going to utilize, and they can add those installations in. Those installations then work towards a goal of some certain capacity, and so users can track how far along they are towards meeting that goal. And then they can generate reports that include maps of the layout of those installations, as well as summaries of the equipment type and capacity. So this is, again, a way to assist planners in seeing how different scenarios might play out in terms of the distribution of their renewable energy. And then, as I mentioned before, we are able to generate custom printable and downloadable reports from this tool. So users can print out a printed page that is formatted with the map and tabular results, or they can download the individual map images and CSV files and then use them in their own presentations. Some of the future development that we have planned for the Enterprise Geospatial Toolkit is building on technical potential and those tools. We hope to add the ability to calculate economic potential, so further restricting the available resource based on where it might be profitable based on certain criteria. We also hope to add tools that will support grid integration and capacity expansion models by providing the kinds of data sets that those models need. And also providing tools that will package data to support the development of renewable energy zones. Great, thanks very much. And with that, I will hand it back over to Philip.
Okay, thank you, Donna and John. If there are any questions, please feel free to submit your questions through the question chat window, and we'll get to those after we're done with the presentations. All right, so I'd now like to introduce our next presenter, Mr. Kan Nguyen. Kan has over 15 years of experience in renewable energy planning and development, and is currently supporting the Thanh Hoa Provincial Green Growth Task Force in Vietnam on behalf of the USAID Low Emissions Asian Development Program to help the province develop its Green Growth Action Plan. In that role, he has helped to promote the use of the Geospatial Toolkit to inform renewable energy development targets as a key element of Thanh Hoa's Green Growth Action. All right, with that, I'll turn it over to Kan to tell us a little bit more about application of this tool in this very real and current context.
Well, thank you, Sandra, for the introduction. Well, I'm so excited our experience of using GST for Renewable Action Plan development in Thanh Hoa. In my presentation, I will cover the following. First, I will give you a brief introduction about Thanh Hoa, particularly what motivates the province to go for green growth. Then I will share with you why GST was selected and how it was used for Green Growth Action Plan development in Thanh Hoa.
Sorry, Kan, just pausing for a minute. I think there's a lot of noise coming through from your side, so if you're using multiple devices, can you please mute all devices except for the one you're speaking into? Thank you.
That's better? Hi. Hello.
Much better, Kan.
Okay. So Sandra, is better now?
Go ahead. If you wouldn't mind starting over again, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, let me start over again. Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity to join this webinar, and I'm so excited to join the webinar today and share with you the experience of using GST Toolkit for Green Goal Action Plan development in Thanh. So in my presentation, I will cover the following. First, I will give you an introduction about Thanh. In particular, what motivated the province to go for green goals. Then I will share with you why GST was selected and how it will use for green goals action plans development in Thanh. And finally, some observation on the issue and challenges with the use of GST. So let me begin with next slide, please. Next slide, please. So let me begin with a brief introduction about Thanh. Thanh is situated in the north-central part of Vietnam and is the fifth largest province in the country with 3.5 million inhabitants. Thanh has made impressive strides in improving its socio-economic situation. Gross regional domestic product grew by 136% between 2010 and 2014. Foreign investment level among the highest in Vietnam. Rapid poverty reduction from 25% of household in 2010 to about 10% in 2014. However, economic growth has been dependent on natural resources consumptions and ecosystem services, and is threatened by climate change. Therefore, the province aims to pursue green growth to sustain economic growth while reducing pollution and pressure on natural capital by developing a green growth action plan. So these efforts were supported by the USAID through the Low Emission Asia Development Program, LEAD program, and the Vietnam Forestry and Data program. So what is the green growth in Thanh? So aligned with the National Green Goal Action Plans, Thanh aims to achieve green goals by promoting cleaner production, green lifestyle, and greenhouse gas emission reduction. So they are interlinked and support the greenhouse gas emission reduction and a key objective of green growth. The greener lifestyle is about behavior change towards sustainable consumption to ensure that air, water, and land pollution is reduced and public health is safeguarded. So cleaner production is about increased efficiency in utilization of the natural resources as well as reduce pollutants, including greenhouse gas. So next slide. Next slide, please. So how GST met the green goals effort in Thanh, knowing from the earlier presentation that GST function to model and assess renewable energy potential. So in order to answer the question, we need to find out the link between renewable energy and green growth. The answer is development of renewable energy such as wind power, solar power, biomass, and clean energy is a key to achieving greenhouse gas emission reductions, the primary goals of green growth. And geographically, Thanh is good at renewable energy potential. So why GST was selected? First of all, GST is a free software populated with the country data. it combines renewable energy resource information with other data, and it can evaluate renewable energy potential visually in a very effective way. Essentially, it combines steps in renewable energy resource assessment, or you can say it is a specialized toolkit to for the renewable energy resource assessment, and we make it very quick and effective for the renewable energy assessment than the commercial software, wherein people have to step by step identify the suitable areas by overlaying the information on top of each other. And it is, therefore, it is a very effective tool and fairly easy to use. In Thanh Hoa, we have already partner. We have Anvil as the tool developer and USAID LEAP program as the capacity building partner that offer support to the application of the toolkit. So how GST were used in Thanh Hoa? So first, the training on GST were provided to the Green Goal Task Force, to the member who are responsible for the calculation in the province. So the good thing with that training is the data available locally were identified during the training. So as Donna mentioned earlier, good data provide good results. So it's a very key condition for the successful application of the GST, and enable reliable results can be produced. So with the data that are available in the province, GST version for Thanh Hoa were developed, and then with the customized GST version, the wind and solar potential in Thanh Hoa has been evaluated, and USAID provided comments on the selection criteria, and the results then were converted into capacity units using the standard land tech. So that's the brief how the GST were used in Thanh Hoa. So next slide. Next slide, please. So a little bit more detail on the application of GST for the wind power, the grid connected in Thanh Hoa. So first is we agreed on the selection criteria. So mainly two key criteria are important. So first is the wind resources. So in the case of Thanh Hoa, we put the minimum wind resource at 65 meter height at 6 meters per second. And the other criteria is about the suitability of the site, and also about the infrastructure of the site to make sure that it is suitable for wind power development. So the criteria is about the distance to the main road for the transportation, the distance to the transmission grid for the grid connection, and it is about the topography of the site. So with that, we have identified two areas that are having potential for wind power development. And the one with the red circle is more prioritized by the province, considering as a land use in the province. Next slide. Next slide, please. So the key question then is how the result from GST were used in the development of the Green Goal Action Plan in Thanh Hoa. So renewable energy option, including wind power, solar power, biomass, and so on, and other low carbon options were evaluated by marginal abatement cost curve to the right prioritized option and therefore the targets. So the greenhouse gas emission reduction that were set in Taiwan were 40% by 2020 and 23% by 2030. So the specific target for renewable energy are ground-mounted solar PV, 20 megawatt by 2020 and 100 megawatt by 2030, rooftop solar PV for 40 building, each 20 kilowatt by 2030, and wind power 20 megawatt by 2020 and 40 megawatt by 2030. So the Green Goal Action Plan was approved by the chairman of the People Committee of Taiwan on the 28th January 2016, and now the province enter into the implementation phase. And for that, the Green Goal Task Force or the provincial government has asked USAID, in particular the LEAD and VFD program, to continue to provide support to the Taiwan province by developing a concept note for prioritize project, including the solar PV power plant. So besides salient feature, as already explained, GST has several issues and challenges. So the evaluation results are very much dependent on the quality and availability of the data. So good results require good data. So in the case of Taiwan, we are very fortunate that we benefited from the efforts from other donors. In the case of the GIS data that were made by the other project. Anyway, the result from the evaluation need verification. So in the first step, it could be verified by conducting a site inspection, and then if the site inspection give a good result, in the case of wind energy, some sort of on-site measurement need to be carried out to make sure that the wind is really suitable for the project development. The other issue with GST is it relatively slow. It's not a surprise because it handles substantive amount of data, and it combines all the steps in the program. So that is one issue. The other issue is the option of exporting data in a different format, such as shape file, that could be used in commercial software like MapInfo, ArcView, and so on. But importing data is a challenge and require GIS expertise. Yeah, so with that, I hand over to Sandra for the Q&A session. Thank you.
Hi all. I'll take over here to moderate the Q&A session. A big thanks to Khan and all of our presenters, Dara and John, for helping us profile the Geospatial Toolkit. And thanks again to Khan for sharing your experience and how the Geospatial Toolkit was applied in Thanh Hoa in Vietnam. And finally, a big thanks to all of our audience for joining us in this session. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen in with us. So now moving on to the Q&A session. A quick reminder, if you haven't already, Please, if you have any questions, type them into the question box in the right-hand GoToWebinar control panel for on your screens. And please also find contact information for our panelists, as well as the home pages for the Energy Working Group and Asia LED's partnership on this slide. So, first question that we have, and I believe this will be a quick one, is it possible for the Geospatial Toolkit to give information for other renewable energy resources, for example, hydropower, biomass, in addition to wind? The latest research that I've been able to dig up says that solar, wind, biomass, geothermal, and hydropower are all resources that are covered under the Geospatial Toolkit. Donna and John, if you have any updates on that, then please share here.
Hi, this is Donna. Yes, so we do have some toolkits that have query capability for biomass, and we can definitely display and do have toolkits that display as visualization layers some hydro resource information, geothermal resource information, and biomass. So the toolkit that has biomass querying capability is Vietnam. And I think I would have to go through and find the ones that have the other resource technologies, but pretty much if the layer is available in a spatial format, we can always add it as a visualization layer and make attributes queryable so that you could see what like the megawatt potential was for a microhydro point. It just may not be available to be combined with some of the infrastructure analysis.
Okay, thank you, Donna. And looks like we have another question. This question is, how can I customize the Geospatial Toolkit for my city or country? Is there a city level of specificity? I believe you covered this in the presentation, how you can sort of zoom into particular areas, but besides that, are there any other ways to specify for a city?
Yeah, mainly if there is an existing toolkit, it would just be kind of zooming in and setting your sort of analysis processing area to just that small area around that city. If we don't already have a geospatial toolkit created, then basically you could do it, but it would need a lot of expertise in order to create a new packet of data in order to basically build your own GST for your city. It's not impossible, but it would take work. And we do have some resources on how to build a customized GST. They're all based, though, on just like substituting layers in an existing GST, not building one from scratch.
Okay, great. Thank you, Donna. Speaking of which, I had a quick question. Are there any upcoming tutorials or in-person workshops in which the Geospatial Toolkit will be featured to help inform other users of their applicability?
I'm not sure about the upcoming workshops. I believe that we have someone going to Kenya to talk about a geospatial toolkit for Kenya that has been developed in May, but I can confirm that. John, will you be demonstrating the eGST in July? I think that the eGST will be rolled out like and then John is I believe going to be demonstrating that application in India in July. But we can get a confirmation of any upcoming opportunities where the toolkits will be demonstrated and distribute that.
Yeah, Donna, and in addition to that, our section supervisor, Anthony, will be demonstrating the Enterprise Geospatial Toolkit in the Philippines at the ASEF conference in early June, the first week of June.
Great, thank you. We have another question here. Are there any projects, speaking of follow-up to the results of the Vietnam Geospatial Toolkit. Have there been any renewable energy projects implemented according to the GST results? I suppose this is a question for Khan.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yes, the province of Thanh as I said, is now entering into the implementation phase of the Green Growth Action Plans, and already they have identified some prioritized renewable energy project, and we are now working with them on the solar PV project in Thanh Hoa. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Tom. And we're having another question here regarding associated costs with the Geospatial Toolkit. I think Khan pointed this out in his presentation. The Geospatial Toolkit is available free of charge.
Yeah.
So if there are any other questions, please submit them. We just had a question come in regarding if, for you, Khan, regarding if any other tools, energy planning tools, were used to complement the Geospatial Toolkit in implementation of the Green Growth Development Plan for Thanh Hoa.
So in the case of Thanh Hoa, we use several other tools. First is a tool on greenhouse gas emission inventory, just to make sure how much greenhouse gas was emitted in the province in the current years and also in the past. And then we also use the long-range energy planning tool, the LIP tool, to model the energy scenarios. So to develop the baseline for the energy sector in the case that there's no policy or interventions on the low carbon option in the province. And then a very important tool that I already mentioned is the renewable energy potential assessment. And for that, we use GST to model and to assess renewable energy potential to identify how many megawatt or also from wind and power and biomass that can be developed in the province. And finally, we use the marginal abatement cost curve to rank the low carbon options so that people can see which option are better than the other option. So that is also the way, a very visual way for the province to prioritize which options are better than the other option, and then finally they can make a choice and therefore make a target in the Green Growth Action Plan.
Okay. So were the results from the Geospatial Toolkit once they were produced accompanied by a feasibility study regarding implementation of individual renewable energy projects? This is another question.
Yeah, that is the next step. So the next step is we will develop a feasibility study for the sites that were identified by the Geospatial Toolkit. But prior to that, we need to inspect the site to make sure that the site is really suitable for the wind power or solar power. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I'll give another couple seconds for any last latecomers for questions. Seeing none, let's move on to the poll for this the survey for the webinar. We really appreciate you guys staying on the line to provide your feedback. All right, and one final question. All right, great. Thank you so much, everyone, for your feedback. We appreciate your attention to the webinar, and with that, I will close.